What's up, everyone? Welcome to Build Bronze and Dragons. I'm your host, Bron Bafflestone. So today we're having another episode of my character build series, where I present to you the final installment of my No-Dip Artificer series in the Protector Artillerist. I really enjoyed this build because I'm a defensive-minded player, and it turns out to be pretty awesome, as most of the Artificer builds have turned out to be. It brings an incredible amount of damage, and it also has the super sweet defenses of the Protector cannon, and as a defensive-minded player, I'm really down with that. So once again, I want to call out my team on the Discord. This build is way better because of their participation, so thank you very much, guys. If anyone out there wants to be a part of that community, check out my Patreon and you can support the channel. Also, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Without further ado, let's take a look at the Protector Artillerist. So I put the setup on the screen and we can see what we're doing here. The Protector Artillerist is going to be custom race with Strength 17, Dex 14, Constitution 12, Intelligence 14, Wisdom 8, and Charisma 8. We come with Dark Vision, and as always, I'll be comparing our build DPR to a standard DPR baseline of Agonizing Blast plus Hex hitting 60% of the time, and an Elite DPR baseline of a fighter with Fighting Style Archery, Crossbow Expert, and Sharpshooter hitting 70% of the time. Also, as a reminder, I present to you the DPR build figures in modular form so that you know what you're doing round to round based on the choices that you make. And if you want to know what you're doing over the course of what you consider to be an average battle, you're going to have to do a little bit more math, but I've at least provided you the figures to do that. Our playstyle will be as a melee martial tank who mixes it up on the front line while supporting his allies. And I color code my DPR build boxes so that they are red if they are below the standard DPR baseline, they are yellow if they are above the standard but below the elite DPR baselines, they are green if they are above the elite DPR baseline, and they are white if they are way above the elite DPR baseline, by which I mean at least 120% of it. At level 1, we get Magical Tinkering, 2 cantrips, 2 spell preps, and a couple of spell slots. Our cantrips will be Guidance and Mending, Guidance being self-explanatory, and Mending for utility and fixing our Eldritch Cannon at level 3, but it's not critical to the build. Feel free to choose a different one like Spare the Dying, Message, Thorn Whip, etc. Those are all pretty useful. For our 2 preps, we'll take Expeditious Retreat and Fairy Fire. Expeditious Retreat for a mobility bump and to enable or defend against kiting. It's one of my no-brainers that I always add to a build when it's available. And Fairy Fire for an offensive party buff and versus invisible creatures. No end of turn save on Fairy Fire, so it's a pretty strong option for our slot and our concentration. And our starting feat will be Polearm Master for solid DPR. We're going to be getting 2 attacks every round, and that's really awesome at level 1. Don't forget this build comes with Magical Tinkering, which is pretty cool for a quote-unquote ribbon. So see my deep dive series video on Magical Tinkering for more information. It's actually pretty cool. And our weapon will be the Spear. This offers the highest available one-handed melee damage that we can get from simple weapons, and we can also throw it as our ranged attack if need be. For armor, we'll go with Scale Mail plus Dex plus Shield for a solid 18 at level 1. Our round 1 will be either to Fairy Fire and Attack, plus bonus action attack, and our DPR box is a solid yellow. We're at 7.5, which is right between the standard and the elite baselines. At level 2, our infusions come online. To our spell preps, we add Absorb Elements as a self-explanatory add to our caster defensive suite, and note that it's nice for a melee martial as it does confer a little bit of extra damage as well. Our infusions known will be Enhanced Defense, Returning Weapon, Spell Rot Tattoo, and Bag of Holding, making active Enhanced Defense and Returning Weapon. Enhanced Defense is self-explanatory, Returning Weapon since it's basically Enhanced Weapon plus a self-reloading spear, so that's pretty cool. And we will add a familiar with the Spell Rot Tattoo, which is possible rules as written, but do check with your DM. It's possible this was a Wizards of the Coast oversight and your DM might think it's overpowered, in which case you can choose a different infusion. Here we'll assume that we can take the Owl for the Flyby Help action, which will reliably impart advantage to a single attack. It's also good for delivering touch spells such as Guidance, Mending, Lesser or Greater Restoration, Rope Trick, Revivify, Tiny Servant, and Freedom of Movement, all of which we will add at some point. Do note that with Rope Trick, the rope can be very short, so the Owl will be able to handle it. See my deep dive series video on Rope Trick for more information about that. And note that the familiar is good for defense and utility. See my deep dive series video on advanced familiar tactics for more info on that. Our final infusion will be the bag of holding. It offers decent utility for special occasions. We can also do the bag of holding bomb tactic if the DM allows. But it's not critical to the build as we're not going to be making it active, so feel free to pick a different infusion if you want the Mind Sharpener, the Cap of Water Breathing, Sending Stones, Perfume of Bewitching, Lantern of Tracking. All of those can offer some utility uses in, depending on your campaign. I'll presume we can bump our armor to half plate if we can afford it. If not, obviously don't do it yet, but as soon as possible. So half plate plus dex plus shield plus enhanced defense to bring our armor class to a solid 20 at our level 2. No change to our round 1 and 2, but because of the owl, our DPR is now a green box. If we'd gotten another 0.1 damage, we would have been a white box. So we're like at 119% of the elite DPR baseline at level 2. And at level 3, we officially become Artillerist, and the Eldritch Cannon comes online. To our spell preps, we add Shield, Thunderwave, and Detect Magic, dropping Fairy Fire. Shield and Thunderwave came with the subclass, and both are excellent for the build. Shield is self-explanatorily amazeballs for a class that doesn't normally get it. Although use it with discretion, because remember that we are spamming temporary hit points every round because we added the Protector here, and this reduces the marginal value of reducing damage via Shield. So it might make more sense to just eat that damage, which will be reduced by the Protector, and then we can refresh our temporary hit points the next round without expending a slot for Shield. So something to think about from battle to battle. And Thunderwave is a great AoE blast for us. Has good synergy with our melee martial playstyle. The Thunderwave will push but not damage our Eldritch Cannon if it's the small one that moves independently. But do note that we are half casters, so we don't have a great amount of slots for blasting, so be opportunistic. We are Artillerists, we should be blasting, but don't be blowing all of your slots. That's why we added Detect Magic as a ritual to take pressure off of our slots, because pretty much all of our first level slots should now go to the Eldritch Cannon. And if we really need it, defense, by which I mean shield, absorb elements, or expeditious retreat. Note that we get Woodcarver's Tool, so we can crank out arrows for party members. 5 per short rest and 20 per long rest could come in handy. And more importantly, the Eldritch Cannon Protector is now online. I'm using the Protector in this build, but you could definitely opt for the Flamethrower if you want more offense and less defense. The build doesn't really change depending, so pick your poison. It's not like the Force Ballista build that I rolled out last time where the feat progressions are different. And the Flamethrower does offer some interesting synergies with Web at level 5, with Winged Boots at level 10, and also at level 4 when we pick up Crusher, which will allow us to reposition enemies into the AoE so that they'll all fit and we can get more. Recalling that the Crusher push is awesome because you can put them in any adjacent square, even if it's more than a pull than a push, right? Even though physics, those are the rules as written, and that trumps in real life physics. I know that's news to some people, haha. And I showed some diagrams on the screen to explain what I mean by this. It can be very useful, just move them around and set them up and then blast them down. But we're going with a Protector, and that is an elite tanking option because we are going to be spamming temporary hit points to ourselves, to our allies, to our cannon, to our familiars, to our summons, all day long. That is just so good for the defensive-minded player. Note, because we can do it an unlimited amount of times, we will always use it as many times as we need to before battle to get maximum on everybody. So basically everyone in the party is going to be starting with a maximum layer of 10 additional temporary hit points every battle. That's awesome. And we will be using it during combat as our primary bonus action going forward, even though it does clog with Polearm Master. However, we don't use the cannon in round 1 because we pre-buff, and we're only going to be using it sporadically in later rounds, if at all. We might not even need it in some battles. So as such, the Polearm Master bonus action attack is still going to be a nice offensive option for us for those off rounds in which we don't need to activate the Protector. And don't worry, there are other benefits to this which are going to become apparent later in the build. Now, the Eldritch Cannon has a 1 hour duration and it takes an action to manifest it, so that's annoying. Always try to have one ready to go before combat begins, because creating it in combat is going to be really bad for our action economy. Obviously, you don't have a choice sometimes, but do try to manage it. And note that we do get 1 Eldritch Cannon for free, otherwise it takes a spell slot. Note that it's a magical object, so is thus immune to damage for most spells, for example, Shatter. It's really hard to damage magical objects with spells in 5th edition. Note that if we're using the small version, it is an object, so it won't incur opportunity attacks or anything else that applies to creatures. For example, most spells like Web or Grease, except that it is still affected by difficult terrain, so there is a little bit of an effect there. And it's also immune to conditions, so it would ignore things like nets or grapple. Personally, I favor the tiny version that attaches to us. It just seems more manageable to me, but the small version is intriguing. It does control more space, it does present another target for enemies as a damage soak, and it's fairly durable, and we do have mending, so we'll be able to repair it without expending any resources. But we do drop it later, so hopefully your cleric has it, or you can ask him to take it. Regardless, it's pretty durable, and we do need to remember to be within 60 feet of it to activate it, but I can see people opting to use the small self-propelled version. We switch up our rounds 1 and 2 a little bit to add the option for the Eldritch Cannon, and no change to the damage situation. We are still green at about 119% of the Elite DPR baseline. At level 4, we get our first ASI, which will be Crusher. To our cantrips, we will add Booming Blade and drop Mending. This will be an optional attack for us on rounds where we're using the Protector and not the Polearm Master bonus action attack. To our preps, we add Featherfall as utility, but we're going to drop it at the next level, so it's a placeholder as well. And as I said, our ASI will be Crusher to bring our strength to 18 and add the amazing 5-foot push and critical riders. This has synergy with the Booming Blade that we just added because it will reliably proc the secondary damage rider. They'll start their turn not next to you and are going to be faced with the choice of not moving and being effective to escape the damage, or closing to melee range to attack us and eating the damage. We are now going to switch our weapon to the quote-unquote quarterstaff to synergize with Crusher because the spear is piercing on one of its attacks. But technically we're going to be using the Arcane Focus staff. There's like 3 different staffs in 5th edition, but Jeremy Crawford has confirmed that we can use the Arcane Focus staff as a quarterstaff for melee purposes, meaning that we will be able to use it as our Arcane Firearm at level 5. It's just that we won't be able to use a quarterstaff +1 or something if we find it as loot. And there's a price difference. The Arcane Focus Staff costs 5 gold, and the Quarterstaff only costs 2 silver, so bookkeeping note. We will, however, continue to carry the spear as a ranged option, because we're only going to need it for 1 round, probably, if we're being kited, in which case we'll use Expeditious Retreat to close, but we might need 1 ranged attack while we're doing that, and so that's why we'll continue to carry a spear. And because of that, we also change up our infusions known and active. We replace Returning Weapon with Enhanced Weapon. No change to our round 1 and 2, but our damage box is now yellow because the Elite DPR baseline got a pretty big bump here and we got a smaller bump. So we're still really close, but they do beat us by a few percentage points. Level 5 is a huge level for us as we enter Tier 2 and Arcane Firearm comes online, as well as 2nd level spells and a doubling of our slots. I put at the top a list of our cantrips, spell preps, infusions known, and infusions active, which I'll be doing for every new tier. And at this point, we really switch up our tactics. Booming Blade is going to be our main attack going forward, because it synergizes with Arcane Firearm, which is awesome. It synergizes with the Crusher Push to reliably proc the secondary damage, and we will now never use our Polearm Master bonus action attack. All this feat does for us now is give us a reaction attack. And I know it's anti-synergy, but there's a method to my madness besides buffing Tier 1. It's going to be okay. Note that in the DPR box, the Quarterstaff plus Booming Blade means the main attack, and the Booming Blade by itself just means the secondary rider if it procs. To our spell preps, we had Scorching Ray, Shatter, Web, and Blur, dropping Detect Magic and Featherfall. Scorching Ray and Shatter came with the subclass. Scorching Ray is bad, it doesn't synergize with Arcane Firearm, we are never going to cast this, but Shatter can be a decent blast for us. It will hit multiple targets, we can expect a decent amount of damage, but really only worth our slot if we can get like 3 or 4 enemies into the AoE, so use it with discretion. Web is a much preferred option for the slot. It's an elite offensive control option that can take down flying creatures that lack hover. There's synergy with our Thunder Wave because we can push enemies into the web. And if you chose the Flamethrower option, there is some synergy there as well because burning webs inflict extra damage. So great add for us here. And we will add Blur as an elite defensive option. Does have great synergy with our fantastic AC and Protector Cannon, but I think we can favor Web for more offensive control in most battles and still have a solid defense. I would retain Blur as a backup option just in case we're in a really hairy scenario in a constrained environment against multiple enemies, etc. In that case, it'll be really nice. And again, our Arcane Firearm is online to boost all of our damage. It's going to buff our Booming Blade, which is our primary attack now, which is really such a nice little combo, I think. To get that just every round is the main thing. But it's also going to buff all of our other blasts. So even though we don't blast much, when we do, it's really going to hurt. And note that we can make our staff the Arcane Firearm. I mean, it does qualify, so we're all good rules-wise. So not much change to our round 1 and 2. I added a blast option. And in the DPR box, we go to white. We are way above the elite DPR baseline at level 5. And get used to it, folks. This thing really dishes out incredible damage, even though it's a protector spamming temporary hit points. I mean, I'm really digging this build. At level 6, Tool Expertise comes online, and we get an Infusions bump. To our preps, we add Lesser Restoration for healing the appropriate conditions. To our Infusions known, we add Repulsion Shield, Radiant Weapon, and Resistant Armor, dropping Enhanced Weapon. Most of those are self-explanatory, but Resistant Armor I just thought might come in handy if we know what enemies are coming up as a utility option. And we don't need Enhanced Weapons, so why not? And our Infusions active will be Repulsion Shield, Radiant Weapon, and Enhanced Defense, noting that the Radiant Weapon does defeat Magical Darkness. No change to our round 1 and 2, but our DPR box did drop to green, as the elite baseline got a bump here to almost catch up with us. At level 7, Flash of Genius comes online to bump our initiative, our saves, and our Dispel Magic checks, among other things. Note that we can't apply it to initiative if we're surprised, and it's not amazing for us right now because our intelligence isn't great, but don't worry, there is a plan at work. We're going to fix that. No change to our round 1 and 2, no change to the damage situation. We're still green. Level 8 is a huge level for us. We get another ASI, and to our spell preps, we add Rope Trick as an ultimate defense option, but also as a placeholder, which will drop at the next level. But more importantly, our ASI is going to Warcaster, and we now have one of the most vicious reaction attacks in the game, folks. The Polearm Master reaction attack, plus Warcaster, plus Crusher Push, plus Booming Blade combo is now online, and we are fierce because we can reliably do 2 full Booming Blade sequences every round. Okay, not if we're surprised, but otherwise every round we are going to be able to get 2 attacks off with Booming Blade because of the push. This combo is so good, and it's totally legal. We can do this rules as written. It's also supported by Merle's tweets as being the rules as intended, because unlike, for example, Eldritch Blast, Booming Blade does employ the weapon which triggers the Polearm Master reaction attack, so we are all good with the rules, both as written and as intended. This is the star combo of this build. I think it is so good, and man, it makes this build really attractive to play to me. Some technical notes: the Repulsion Shield push is only going to be used now if we are attacked by melee from beyond a 5-foot reach, because otherwise we'll use our Polearm Master reaction attack. And similarly, our Radiant Weapon reaction is only going to be used versus ranged attacks or from melee from beyond 5-foot reach, because again, otherwise we're going to be using our Polearm Master reaction attack. Last technical note, our DPR dipped here a bit because the target AC increased and our attack bonus didn't. No change to our round 1 and 2 except that I added the reaction attack. And so now we are white, and we are solidly nearly double baseline DPR. Solidly double. That's where we're at, and that's where we stay, folks. It doesn't change. At level 8, we take on a damage output that is essentially double the elite DPR baseline. That is amazing. This build kicks ass. Level 9 is also a huge level for us because Explosive Cannon comes online and we get 3rd level spells. To our preps, we had Fireball, Wind Wall, and Haste, dropping Rope Trick. And Fireball and Wind Wall came with a subclass, and they're good. Fireball is the king of the blast, so it's going to do over 100 expected damage. Synergizes with our Arcane Firearm, which is good because we're getting it a little bit late at 9th level. And Wind Wall is an interesting combo of blast and defense that I can see casting sometimes. Does a little bit of damage to a few enemies, but it's a combo spell. Really fantastic versatility in your deployment because you can shape it as a wiggly line, unlike most walls which have to be straight. And it's a really amazing defense versus ranged attack enemies, so I like this spell. I can see casting it. But more importantly, Haste is now online as our primary option for slots and concentration going forward. Haste brings the Polearm Master bonus action attack back online. I told you there was a method to my madness. And now our damage numbers are just even more redonkulous, remembering that we can do this twice per round. This thing just really dishes out the damage. Explosive Cannon is online, but it does nothing for us as we're not using offensive cannons, so yay. I mean, if you chose the Flamethrower, it'll get a bump. But the Protector gets nothing, so okay. We can blow up the cannon, which does essentially offer Shatter for a first level slot, which can be okay, I guess, but personally I don't see myself ever doing that. Although if you do that, you can combo it with Catapult. We switch up our infusions known a bit, we bring back Enhanced Weapon and drop Resistant Armor, because we're prepping for the next level, as we can only change 1 infusion per level, and we're going to want to change 2. Slight change to our round 1 and 2, I added Haste and our Haste attack, and the damage situation is the same. We're white and like 2.5 times the elite baseline. Level 10 is a huge level for us, as we get an infusions bump, 10th level infusions come online, and magic item adept is online. We get a new cantrip, so we're bringing back Mending. To our preps, we add Dispel Magic, Revivify, and Tiny Servant. Dispel Magic as a caster must-have, Revivify as a self-explanatory add, Tiny Servant as a little helper for utility and defense, and to manage our SSI at the next level, also for rest tricking. Don't forget that yours are even better than normal, because we're going to be buffing them up with temporary hit points from the Protector. That'll more than double their durability. See my separate deep dive videos on Tiny Servant and rest tricking for more info about those. And to our infusions known, we add the Headband of Intellect, Cloak of Protection, and Winged Boots, dropping Radiant Weapon, and our infusions active will be Enhanced Weapon, Enhanced Defense, Headband of Intellect, and Cloak of Protection. Our Enhanced Weapon and Enhanced Defense each bump to +2, and the Headband of Intellect is online for a huge bump to Intelligence for our Protector Cannon, our Flash of Genius, and our casting stat. That's a really nice bump for us. And we have the Winged Boots now available for special occasions, or just in place of the Cloak of Protection if you would like it better. But realistically, it seems to me like we'll be able to use this because it's pretty likely that by this point we'll have acquired real magic items, and that's going to offset our need for some of these infusions. And Winged Boots is obviously one of the best uncommons in the game. Flight on demand with no action economy is just amazing in 5th edition. And it does offer an interesting synergy with the Flamethrower because you can aim it straight down and affect an entire 3x3 grid. So that'll add a few squares to the area of effect. And Magic Item Adept is online for 4 attunements and quick and cheap magic item construction. That is just so crazy good. Depends on your table somewhat, but regardless of the table, it's going to be really good. No change to our round 1 and 2, and no change to our damage box except we got even better, made the gap even bigger. At level 11, we entered Tier 3. To our preps, we add Rope Trick, dropping Web, bringing it back as an ultimate defense option. Nice synergy with the Winged Boots if we have that infusion active, as we'll be able to put the portal up high and fly in and out of the portal without the rope. DM discretion, of course. More importantly, our spell storing item is now online. We're going to be giving this to our Familiar or Tiny Servant to weaponize its action and concentration. Note that you can manage the Tiny Servant action economy with standing orders to free up your bonus action for the cannon. And we're going to load ours with Web. It's just a really great control option when you can spit it out 8 times a day. Note that burning the web, for example with the Flamethrower, does cause more damage, but it doesn't unrestrain them immediately. That means we can immediately hit them with another web if we want and retain control. Web is just really good when you can spam it. To our infusions known, we are going to add the Helm of Telepathy and drop Repulsion Shield. It's just a better utility option for special occasions. In fact, it is an amazeballs one. See my deep dive series video on Helm of Telepathy for more info on this game-breaking item. It's a really nice one to have in your back pocket whenever you need to gain intel. Slight change to our round 1 and 2 as I added the web from the Familiar or the Tiny Servant, and a little bit of shuffling of the numbers in our DPR box, but it's still solidly white. We're crushing it on the damage. At level 12, to our preps we add Aid for more defense and for rest tricking because it's got an 8-hour duration and you can do that. But also as a placeholder, which will drop at the next level. We get an ASI, which will be Strength +2 to max out our combat stat, and we mix up our infusions known again a little bit by adding the Hat of Disguise and dropping the Bag of Holding. It's just a better utility option for special occasions. No change to our round 1 and 2, no change to our damage box except that we get a little bit of a bump for our stat increase. At level 13, we get 4th level spells, so to our preps we add Ice Storm, Wall of Fire, and Resilient Sphere, dropping Aid. Ice Storm and Wall of Fire came with a subclass, and Ice Storm is not great, even for blasters. Its expected damage is less than Fireball, so even though it's a better damage type, I don't ever see casting that. But Wall of Fire is a nice add. Persistent AoE is always cool, decent expected damage, We have Thunder Wave, so we can push enemies into it, and our party might have other push-pull options, so it's a good spell. And Resilient Sphere is a nice add as an ultimate defense option for ourself or an ally, also a decent saver suck. But honestly, all of these 4th level options are situational only. To me, the 4th level slot is best devoted to haste in most cases, or even for 3 tiny servants over an 8-hour duration. But that's only if you're a cheesy weirdo who likes to get the absolute maximum value out of your builds, and I get that a lot of people are offended by the suggestion of implementing tiny servants to your benefit, because that's just like super cheesy. No change to our rounds 1 and 2, no change to our damage situation. At level 14, we get an Infusions bump and Magic Item Savant. We get a cantrip, which will be Thorn Whip for an elite pull option. Remember that we do have persistent AoE options in Web, Wall of Fire, and Transmute Rock. And we can combo it with Wing Boots to drop an enemy for an extra d6 damage plus prone. So that's a pretty cool combo. To our preps, we add Freedom of Movement for utility, noting that it will allow us to completely ignore our own webs. And to our Infusions known, we add the Amulet of Health and the Gem of Seeing, making active the Amulet of Health. That's going to give us a huge hit point and con save bump. And the Gem of Seeing is nice utility for special occasions. And Magic Item Savant is online for an extra attunement and no restrictions on attunements. That is just so good. No change to our round 1 and 2, no change to our damage situation. And level 15 is a massive level for us. Fortified Position is now online for double Eldritch Cannons and a nice defensive bump for us and allies by providing half cover. So double cannons are awesome, but 2 protectors doesn't make any sense. So we're going to go Protector Flamethrower here. That's going to increase our DPR even more, and it's fine for our playstyle because we're a melee martial, and we're just going to be able to blow up the people that are right in front of us to the tune of 10.8 each, with an expected 2 enemies per blast. That's another 21 damage every round, guys. We're already killing it with damage, blowing away the elite DPR baseline, and guess what? We just stacked on a Flamethrower. That is so good. Remember, the Flamethrower synergizes with Crusher because we can push them around and get an extra guy into the AoE. Recall that we can get a 3x3 crit if we combine it with Wing Boots or other flight. And remember that it will set ablaze objects, so you want mass property destruction, it's pretty good for that. And the half cover is an awesome defense. Bump my AC by 2 and my dex saves by 2? Yes, please. But do note that the AoE emanates from the cannon, and since both of your cannons are going to be on you, you're not going to be able to help the ranged and caster allies on the back line, probably. No change to our round 1 and 2, except of course activating the cannons is going to blow up both the Flamethrower and the Protector, and we're doing a lot more damage, which is reflected in the DPR box. But we already went white a long time ago, so now it's just a matter of like, oh, are we like at 3 times elite DPR, 4 times elite DPR baseline? Honestly, at this point, it's probably rude to check. We're like way, way, way above the elite DPR baseline, and that's all we need to say, or else our Battle Master Crossbow expert's going to get a little upset and feel inadequate. At level 16, to our preps, we add Arcane Eye as an excellent utility option that doesn't normally pressure our slots, but also as a placeholder that will drop at the next level. And Lucky is online for those sweet rerolls. One of the best feats in the game. I always try to add it, and I just did it here. No change to our round 1 and 2. At level 17, we enter Tier 4. To our preps, we add Cone of Cold, Wall of Force, and Mordenkainen's Faithful Hound, dropping Resilient Sphere. Cone of Cold and Wall of Force came with a subclass. Cone of Cold is an okay blast for us. Personally, I don't ever see casting this because we've got Wall of Force, and that's one of the best spells in 5th edition. So yeah, that's going to get the slot. And we're going to combo it with Mordenkainen's Faithful Hound, so we have an auto-win option. A once-a-day auto-win option is just super amazing. No change to our rounds 1 and 2. We get our final damage bump with the tier increase in our cantrips. So this is our maximum damage output, and it is super impressive. Even though the elite baseline got a bump here, we are still blowing it away. We've still got that vicious reaction attack that's been annihilating enemies for 9 levels now. This character's DPR numbers are super impressive. At level 18, we add Bigby's Hand to our preps as a versatile persistent defense, grapple, and push. To our infusions known, we add the Ring of Protection and Dimensional Shackles, making active the Ring of Protection. The ring is self-explanatory, the Dimensional Shackles are for special occasions. And Magic Item Master is online, we get another attunement, and we are even more crazy goodness. That is such a really awesome ability. That's hard to reflect in these builds, but man, in real play, that's going to be so good. At level 19, we get our final ASI, which will be tough for a massive hit point bump. No change to our round 1 and 2 or our damage boxes. And at level 20, we add Transmute Rock to our preps as one of the best controls in the game. No concentration is always amazing, and that means we can both Thunderwave or use Bigby's hand to push enemies into it. I mean, Bigby's plus Transmute Rock is a really good combo. But more importantly, Soul of Artifice is online for ridiculous saves, a quasi-death ward. Gotta make sure to max out our 6 attunements, but that's not gonna be a problem at 20th level. Do note, however, that the quasi-death ward requires our reaction, and we use our reaction pretty heavily as part of our offense, so remember, you can't use it in the same round that we use our reaction attack. Gotta be aware of that and manage that. But still, one of the best capstones in the game, so always super happy to add it. No change to our round 1 and 2, and no change to our DPR box, but the Elite DPR baseline does take a jump trying to catch up to us. But we've left them in the dust so long ago that I don't even think we even remember what the Crossbow Expert looks like at this point, right? But yeah, nice DPR bump, Crossbow Expert. Very impressive. So yeah, that's the Protector Artillerist. Forgive me for being a little bit smug because the numbers are right there, and for a Protector, this thing dishes out crazy good damage. It has an amazing reaction attack that reliably procs and literally doubles our DPR, taking it into the stratosphere, at the same time that our Protector Cannon is spamming temporary hit points left and right. This might be the very strongest of all of the Artificer builds that I've created, and I did not expect that. I thought the Protector was going to be, less damage in exchange for the defense. I didn't think it was going to be, here's an amazing uber defense that will allow you to tank for all your allies. Oh, and by the way, we're just going to annihilate the Elite DPR baseline, like factors of 2, 3, 4. Yeah. So regardless, thank you so much for watching. This has been Build Bronze and Dragons. I'm your host, Billbrun Bafflestone. See you next time.